Have you ever finished applying your makeup, looked at yourself in the mirror and thought, something's off here. My makeup just doesn't look right. Well, it might be that our complexion products just aren't working well, or something might be off with our brows or the nose contouring that we tried that day. Or maybe later in the day, you notice that your blush has disappeared, your makeup looks a bit cakey, or your lipstick has almost disappeared, or has migrated into one of those pesky little fine lines around your mouth. Well, if any of these things have ever happened to you, stay tuned because there are some makeup artist tips and tricks that can truly make a difference, which I'll be sharing with you today. And the last two tips I'll be demonstrating today are ones I'll be trying for the very first time. And one of them is a technique that could help many of us with an issue which I know is very challenging, but I am just a bit skeptical about how well it might work, so that should be interesting. Well, if you're new here, I am so glad you stopped by, and welcome back to those of you who are returning. Since the makeup and makeup techniques that worked for us in our 20s and 30s don't quite work as magically now as they once did, I've dedicated my work as a makeup artist to discovering and sharing the tips, techniques, and products that do work for us now through online personal Zoom makeup consultations, in-person classes, presentations to women's groups, my weekly newsletter, and this YouTube channel. So I hope you'll find these resources to be helpful. But now, on to some tips which I hope will have you looking in the mirror and seeing a smile on your face. We all know that skin preparation we do before applying makeup is really critical, especially as we get older. So there are two things that we may not be doing in our skin prep that are critical to looking our best. So my first tip today addresses one of these issues, and it's always to apply our thinnest products to our face first. With skincare, this means applying our serums first, then moisturizer, sunscreen, and finally makeup. The second tip is to apply the right type of moisturizer on our face and under our eyes before we apply our makeup. For many of us, our skin gets drier as we get older, so we often gravitate toward thicker and richer moisturizers, and those are fantastic to use at night. That's because those thicker, richer creams may not thoroughly dry down before we apply our makeup. And if our moisturizer doesn't totally dry down before we apply our makeup can literally sink into it and disappear. And if that happens, our tendency is to apply more makeup, which can result in our makeup looking cakey, or we may run the risk of our makeup looking streaky or splotchy. Believe it or not, it can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes for that moisturizer to totally dry down. Now, if you're in a hurry, you can certainly use a paper fan, a small electric fan, or a hairdryer on the cool setting to help the drying process along. Or if you're not in so much of a hurry, we all have many ways we can use that time productively. We can do our eyebrows, apply our eye primer, feed the dog or cat, make the bed, do our hair, make the grocery list or our to-do list, email or phone a friend, or prepare and eat our breakfast. You get the picture, and I'm sure you can come up with a boatload of more items. And if we apply those thick creams under our eyes, we can create a domino effect of issues. That thick cream can cause our makeup to move around, which could mean that we apply even more powder to deal with this issue, and we end up with a heavy, cakey look under our eyes. So stick with a light moisturizer both on the face and under the eyes when you're applying makeup, and save those richer creams for when they'll do the most good and can thoroughly sink into our skin, which is at night. So I'm first going to apply my serums, then an under eye product, and then my favorite lightweight moisturizer. First, I'll apply 3 to 4 drops of my timeless C plus E plus ferulic acid serum. Since this contains vitamin C, which is an acid, it should be applied to the neck and face only and not the eye area. This product brightens the complexion, promotes cell turnover, helps even out skin texture and tone, and stimulates collagen production. It also helps lighten hyperpigmentation and redness. Shake it first, and I'm just going to pat it over my face. And this really absorbs into the skin quickly, and of course, it does help that my skin is incredibly dry right now. Next, I'll apply 4 to 5 drops of my timeless coenzyme Q10 serum, which helps boost cell turnover to build back collagen and elastin, which creates firmer, smoother skin. It also contains hyaluronic acid, which provides hydration. Now this one I will put a little bit under my eyes. If I hadn't already applied my eyeshadow and the rest of my eye makeup, I would also put it on my eyebrows and underneath my eyebrows. Now I'd normally finish my serum application with my Matrixyl Synthé 6 serum. However, I'm totally out of it and my order hasn't yet arrived. The Matrixyl Synthé 6 serum stimulates collagen production and helps reduce the look of fine lines and wrinkles due to its plumping and hydrating effect on the skin. Now we'll move on to moisturizer. I love Shani Darden's Weightless Oil-Free Moisturizer since it's fast absorbing, it's oil-free, and it provides really weightless skin hydration. My other go-to is Merit's Great Skin Moisturizer, which is also weightless, but it does take a little bit longer to absorb into the skin. Today I'm going to use the Shani Darden product. And this is what the texture looks like. Just going to dot it on. It's extremely lightweight, but it does a really good job. It does have a little bit of a fragrance to it, but nothing overwhelming at all, and it really dissipates very quickly. And my skin is just eating this up. So I'm looking at the clock right now to make sure this sinks in and dries completely before we go with makeup. I also love Shani Darden's Hydration Peptide Cream, but that's a richer moisturizing formula that I really only use at night. Now, even though Shani Darden's oil-free moisturizer is very lightweight, it's still a little too much for the under eye area since we want the very lightest amount of moisturizer under the eye that won't add a heavy layer of product. For the under eye area, I use a much lighter weight moisturizer called Prequel, which is half and half peptides and ceramides. And as you can see, it's a thin, lightweight substance, which is what we really want under our eye area. I don't know if you can hear this, but as I shake it, you can hear how thin it is because it's really making noise. And I'm just going to tap a little bit of this on under my eyes. I certainly don't need the 2 whole drops that I tapped out of the bottle. And I do have quite a bit left over. Now, let's move on to our brows for tip number 3. I've recently noticed that under my brows, I've developed some really flaky, dry skin. So I now have to always try to remember to apply a drop of moisturizer under my brows, as well as over the brows when I apply my moisturizer on my forehead. However, that moisturizer can often migrate into our brow area, which can result in our brow products not adhering as well, being more challenging to apply, or not lasting as long. So a quick and easy way to solve this challenge is to first press a Kleenex over the brows and then take a small amount of setting powder on a brush, tap off any excess, and then I'm going to go over my brows this way and then go back over them the other way. And by the way, if you've gotten your brows too dark, this is a great way to lighten them up. Since watching someone do their brows is a bit like watching paint dry, I'll finish my brows off camera, apply my foundation, and be right back. And by the way, the foundation I use today is one of my top 3 favorites. It's Nars Light Reflecting Foundation. Now you may notice a very shiny nose, and that's on purpose. We're going to be dealing with that a little bit later. And as a matter of fact, that next tip is right now, because the question I get asked a lot is how can I get my foundation to stick to my nose? Well, there are many things that might be causing this problem. It may be that your moisturizer isn't compatible with your foundation, or too much product has been applied. Or it may simply be the fact that the sebaceous glands on the nose produce more oil than any other areas of our face because the nose has larger pores. But fortunately, there are 2 relatively easy ways to solve this problem. The one that works the best for me is to first avoid applying moisturizer and foundation on the nose, and then tapping on a small amount of Benefit's Professional Primer onto the nose. So I'm literally just tapping, and I think you can see my nose calming down right away. The shine is basically disappearing, and that's exactly what we want. So really you can accomplish 2 things with this primer. First of all, you can take the shine away, but you can also get your makeup to stick to your nose. Next, rather than applying foundation to my nose, I tap on a concealer. Now you may have to try a couple of different concealers to determine what works best for you, but what works best for me is Catrice's True Skin Hydrating Concealer. I'm not sure why, but for some reason this particular concealer adheres really well to the skin of my nose. Let me show you. Again, I'm just going to tap a little bit on, and then press it into my nose. But I'm going to take it all over that nose area, to the sides, to the bottom. And I think you can see that that concealer is really sticking to my nose, and it also is eliminating any shine. Now I usually let the concealer dry and then tap setting powder over it. Another option that can work for many people is to first tap a setting powder on the nose and then tap foundation over it. The next issue that is challenging for many of us has to do with our lips. For many of us, our lipstick migrates into those fine lines around our mouth, or our lipstick disappears very quickly, or both. I have a major issue with lipstick migrating into those fine lines around my lips, so I take several steps to keep this from happening. Now, if lipstick migration is an issue for you, you may only need to do 1 or 2 of these steps to prevent your lipstick from migrating into those pesky little fine lines, rather than all the steps that I'll be doing today. First, we need to stretch out our lips and apply concealer all the way around the outer edge of our lips. This helps to fill in some of those lines. I'm going to wipe off a lot of the concealer that's on the tip of the applicator first. And then I'm going to tap in the concealer. And this is a line right here that really gives me trouble. Step 2 may just be enough on its own to solve this problem for many of you. And that step is to stretch out our lips once again and apply a light dusting of setting powder around the outer edge of the lips. The next step, step 3, is to use a lip liner, which also helps to create a barrier. I also like to fill in my lips a little bit with a lip liner, just so if my lipstick does wear off a bit, it doesn't look so obvious. And the fourth and final step is to apply a matte lipstick. Now, for years, the last thing I ever wanted to wear was a matte lipstick because they were usually heavy and felt really uncomfortable. But that's thankfully no longer the case with many matte lipsticks that are now available. If you've watched any of my videos, you most likely already know that one of my favorite matte lipsticks is also a very inexpensive one, also from Catrice. It not only feels very lightweight on the lips, but it's also amazingly comfortable. I'm going to apply the shade Good Intentions. Now, to make our lipstick even more long-lasting, a trick that we may have seen our mothers use does still work extremely well. I'm going to separate a piece of Kleenex into 2 layers, press one of the layers across my lips, and then gently tap on a small amount of setting powder. Now I'll apply a second coat of lipstick, which also helps ensure that our lipstick lasts longer. But this time I'll use a different shade called Casually Overdressed to get the lipstick color that I want. Since our lips do get smaller as we get older, adding some gloss to our lips really helps lips look larger and brighter. So I'm going to apply some lip gloss over the matte lipstick, but I will only apply it to the center of my lips. If I were to apply it all the way out to the edge of my lips, there's a very good chance that the gloss would migrate into those fine lines. I'll apply Catrice's Diamond Glaze Lip Gloss in the shade Poppin' Glitters. If you're enjoying today's video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you tap that thumbs up icon and also subscribe. And I'd also like to ask your help in one more way. With all the many new AI-generated videos going up on YouTube, it's becoming harder and harder for those of us who create our own content to compete. One thing that helps YouTube decide to share one of our videos with more people is if the video gets quite a few comments. So if you have a moment to leave a comment, even if it's just a couple of words, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Well, the last 2 tips today come from celebrity makeup artist Nikki LaRose, and they have to do with our blush and our nose contour. And I'll be trying both of these tips for the very first time today. First, let's tackle blush. Many of us may love the look of a Lit From Within blush since it looks especially beautiful on our mature skin. So besides using a glowy liquid or cream blush to achieve this look, there's an additional method we can consider which creates a Lit From Within look, but which also helps our cream blush last longer. In addition, it's an option that can also work well for all skin types, including oily skin. What's different about this technique is that we'll first apply a powder highlighter and then apply a cream blush over it. Now often, just using a powder highlighter on its own doesn't look as natural as a cream or liquid highlighter, since it sits on the skin and can sometimes look splotchy, especially on dry skin. But applying the cream blush over the powder highlighter will hopefully create a beautiful, natural looking glow. Let's give it a try and see how it works. First, I'll apply Makeup by Mario's powder highlighter in the shade Pearl. As you can see, this creates quite a strong glow. And frankly, this is a highlighter that I would not use on its own because for me, it's just a little bit too much glow. Now I'll apply my Tower 28 cream blush in the shade Party Hour on top of the powder highlighter. Just to get this to coat evenly, I'm going to blend it into the brush on the back of my hand. Let's take a close-up look and see how this looks. Although I like the look of this a lot, I have to say that when I did apply that powder highlighter, my skin started to feel very dry. So this may work really effectively for those of you with oily skin or combination skin. Not so sure about those of us with dry skin. Although it could just be this particular highlighter. I'll have to experiment with some other highlighters to see if they work a little bit differently. The last makeup application that we'll be focusing on today, which is a big challenge for many of us, and I know that's the case because I hear about it from many of you, and that is how to make our nose look slimmer by using contour. But the problem for many of us is that applying contour to our nose can be a bit tricky to get right, and we certainly don't want our nose to look like it has a dark stripe running down both sides of it. Well, makeup artist Nikki LaRose describes her nose contouring technique as a quick and easy way to create a natural looking nose contour with minimal effort. She says that we can use either matte powder bronzer or a cream or liquid, but I'm going to go ahead and use a powder bronzer since that's what she used in one of her videos. Now, this is going to look and seem really strange, but the first step is to take a smaller fluffy brush and apply the contour or bronzer all over the nose, including the top of the nose and the sides. I'll use Benefit's Hoola bronzer. So she said to apply it all over the nose. The next step is to use a concealer shade that's slightly lighter than our complexion and apply it on the outer side of the nose, starting at the inner edge of the eyebrow and taking it down no further than the tip of the nose. Then it's to be blended into the cheek gently. As you can see, I'm pretty tentative with my approach here. But I think I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable now, so I'm going to add a little bit more here. I think it's taking shape, but there's one more step. The next step is to use the side of a flat brush to gently tap on the concealer down the center of the nose. Gently tapping it down the center is far easier than trying to draw a straight line down the nose with the concealer. And we don't want the concealer to spread out too far as we do it. I think I can see how this would work, but boy, I think I need a lot more practice at doing this. And Nikki suggests that if we have oily skin, apply powder along the side of the nose and let it sit for 10 minutes and then dust it off. Now, even though I do have dry skin, my T-zone area does get oily, so I'm going to apply just a slight bit of powder over the nose just to make sure all the colors melt together. Well, I can see a lot I did wrong with this, but I hope at least you got the idea of how this works. I am definitely going to need a lot more practice to get this right. Well, if you enjoy watching videos that focus on makeup artist tips, here's another video featuring tips from other celebrity makeup artists that you might also enjoy. And one other thing you might also enjoy is my weekly newsletter. I've put a link to both in the pinned comment below as well as in the description box. Well, I look forward to seeing you again next Thursday for another video. Until then, I wish you good health and happiness, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Take care.